Under One Roof MTL, hosted by Robin Flynn, featuring mortgage brokers Fred and Martin and real estate expert LJ Aguinaga. Presented by Fred and Martin Mortgages and LJ Realties.
Good afternoon. It's 12:04. This is Under One Roof MTL on CJD 800. We like to demystify home ownership 1 week at a time. Super happy to be joined, as always, by the heart and soul of Under One Roof MTL, Fred Pichette and Martin Spalding from Fred and Martin Mortgages. Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon, Robin.
Hey, Robin.
And LJ Aguinaga of LJ Realties. What's up, LJ?
How we doing?
Woohoo! I'm in a great mood because the Taylor Swift album
Where'd
just
that
dropped.
come from?
I saw how low you were. I was like, I really got to bring up the energy today.
I think it's the chicken he just ate. So.
What's your favorite Taylor Swift track off the new album?
Oh,
Deer caught in the headlights.
That's not fair. Of the 133 tracks that were released all at once?
31 tracks.
Okay, I thought it was 133.
Yeah. Just say Fortnite if anybody asks you. That's a safe answer.
It's a Fortnite.
Fortnite. That's
Okay.
it's a track with Post Malone. It's her first single off the album.
Oh, I saw the video, actually.
Yeah, very
There you
cool.
go. Very cool.
Our trivia question of the week. Let's start with that. People want to win some cookies. Brought to you by Felix and Norton Cookies. You can visit their store at the Blue Haven Shopping Center, 3705 St. John's Boulevard in DDO. The first person to text in the correct response to 514-800 with their name will receive delicious Felix and Norton cookies delivered straight to their door. Our question this week, bit of an easy one. When was the last time that Montreal hosted the Summer Olympics? If you think you know the answer, 514-800, and do include your name. I will be ignoring texts that do not have a name associated with them. Guys, let's chat what's in the news this week. I saw a report, inflation up for the month of March. That probably doesn't come as much of a surprise to everybody who is continuing to buy things and living and existing. So what does it mean that inflation has gone up?
What it means in this case primarily is the fact that gas prices are up. And that's what's been pushing the CPI up to 2.9 compared to 2.8 that we saw in the month of February. What does it mean? That the goalposts are probably going to get moved on us a little bit more, that interest rates probably aren't coming down as quickly as possible or as quickly as we had hoped, simply because although the Bank of Canada states that we see the effects of everything we've been doing and we're heading in the right direction, we need to make sure we've really gotten more traction into all the efforts we've put in so far so as to not undo everything we've done so quickly. So what does it mean? That we have to stay the course and hold steady. And even though we know that gas and the cost of living is really what's bringing CPI up, core inflation is actually down close to where we want it, that we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, I put gas in my car on the way here, guys. I was on empty. The gas light had come on. I put $40 in my car, and it wasn't even half a tank. That's depressing. That's depressing.
But you know what? So if you read the headline, you go, okay, not great news for mortgage rates, not great news for inflation, not great news. But if you really start to dig down in all the articles that came out this week, a lot of the economists say if we stay the course, because if you remove gas out of the equation in the month of March, we're actually equal to the month of February in terms of year-over-year inflation.
Okay.
And so a lot of the economists were saying, there's still a possibility that we could see a rate decrease in the month of June. I have to agree with LJ. I think we're pushing it into July. We may be pushing it to the end of the summer, but I'd like to stay optimistic because there are a lot of people who are watching this. I've never spent so much time talking about mortgage rates and inflation in my entire life, because we're feeling the impact of people who signed for their mortgages during COVID at a rock bottom low rate. And now they're confronted with, we got to renew. What do we do? We got to renew. Can we wait? And so any rate decrease will open the floodgates.
Mm-hmm.
And to add to that, it's really been the fact that we've been waiting for this for so long. We're so excited to see it happen right now. It's really got people kind of biting at the chip to see what's going to happen moving forward. And then the U.S. also released data that was kind of contradictory. They had gone up even a bit more, so that scared people more so. And obviously
the U.S. economy is robust right now. The job market is very good. Inflation's getting under control. And so, you know what? We're the little cousin of the United States. So, if they catch a cold, we sneeze, or if they sneeze, we catch a cold.
Yeah, but guys, I really think that it's going to come in June, because in the last announcement of the Bank of Canada, the governor, Tim McLean, really was asked a question by a journalist saying if you still see a first rate cut in June. And his answer was kind of, he sees it. He sees the possibility.
The question was, are we writing off the possibility of a rate cut in June, essentially? It was, is it at all in the world of possibilities? And the answer was, it's in the world of possibilities.
Yeah.
But so is January, February, March, April, May, that answer to me doesn't really give us very much, to be quite frank. I was actually out for dinner last night with a friend who's an economist for the CDPQ, and her job literally relies on basically making these bets as to when these rates are going to be shifting and what to see. And I asked her, like, hey, so what are your expectations? And obviously,
what's your bet?
not aligned at all with no representation in the CDPQ. This is just strictly what she expects was 2 rate cuts before the end of the year.
Okay.
It used to be 3.
Their bet from January, since January, her bet was this: 2 rate cuts throughout the year. First one realistically in July, 25 basis points. Second one in October, 25 basis points.
So 50 basis points really doesn't make a difference. It's not significant. A lot of people think that as soon as rates start going down, they're going to go down as quickly as they went up, which is a fallacy.
Elevator up, stairs down.
Exactly.
Yeah, but it could make a difference if people carry a variable rate or a line of credit.
Well, that all comes down to strategies right now. So we I think a couple of weeks ago, we talked about what's the sweet spot right now. A lot of people are talking about 3 years as opposed to 5, because within 3 years, the majority of the rate cuts will be in place. But then we're been speaking to a lot of clients this week, and a lot of clients are going, you know what, I'm willing to hedge, and I'm going to go variable for the short term, the next 12, 14, 18 months, and I'll lock in when I feel that it's hit my sweet spot. But let's face it, shelter and housing is just going to cost you more.
Quick question. I just want to take it back a little bit. So when we say, cutting interest rates by 25 basis points, 50 basis points, what does that actually look like for the average homeowner? Like, let's say they have a mortgage of $250,000. Like, what is that on their monthly payment?
Well,
what kind of difference?
You just said it. It depends on the size of the mortgage.
Right.
But on a small mortgage, it's peanuts. I mean, 50 basis points on a small mortgage could be the price of 2 lattes a month at Starbucks.
Or Netflix for the month.
Or Netflix for the month.
Okay. But I know a lot of people who have, those smaller mortgages who were, because of the cost of living, forced to do things like cancel Netflix to make up for the difference. So something like that means you get to binge watch TV again. It sounds like peanuts, but that's I think it'll make a difference for the average person.
I'm a big believer, and I say this to a lot of people. When was the last time you actually dissected your credit card? Mm-hmm. A lot of people, the credit card bill comes in, they pay it, boom, or they pay the minimum. They never look at all the charges that's found on your credit card. And often you come across things and go, why are we still paying for that thing? And it might be $20 here, $20 there, but that makes a difference.
For sure. It's your Google's cloud storage. It's your iTunes.
Apple One.
Yeah, Apple, iTunes. They're dinging you for apps every month.
So I ran the scenario for you, and on a $500,000 mortgage, the difference between 50 basis points, one way or another, is going to be $147 on a 30-year amortization. A couple conditions here, but that's roughly what you're looking at. So, look, it's definitely money. I'd rather $150 in my pocket than somebody else's. Mm-hmm. But is that realistically what's going to make or break somebody's budget? If it is, they probably shouldn't be in homeownership right now. Or there's other adjustments to be made right now.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense.
Well, we'll talk in the second quarter about the budget. And so I still believe in homeownership because of what we saw in the budget. Your principal residence is still, in my humble opinion, the best investment you can make in the Canadian market. So, I'm looking. He's looking at me, going, "Okay, why did you have to go there?" And I said, "Because when you're paying rent, you're paying someone else's mortgage, and if you can afford a mortgage, and you can afford it to get the down payment to buy a house, it's always the best." In my humble opinion, I've never lost money on any homes that I've bought. And they've always appreciated. And it was funny because there was another article, because home sales are actually up in the month of March.
Huge.
Year over year. Huh? So I was going to ask LJ, are we feeling that activity? Are you at LJ Retailers? Are you feeling that activity? Yeah. And then, and I'm going to stack my question, because I was looking at the median prices of homes right now. So year over year, family residence went up by 5.6%. And the median price for a single family home is $565. For a Plex, up 5.5%, median price $750, and a condo up 4.9%, which is $400,000. So you look at the percentage of increases. Most homes increase between 2 and 3% on a yearly basis, but we're seeing, because it's again a demand and supply issue that we're living through, and again in the budget, there are all kinds of initiatives to increase the building. But if your house is increasing year over year by 3, 4, 5, 6%, it makes for a great investment.
LJ, you want to take that one quickly before we go to traffic?
The only thing I'll say to that is that the last 12 months of data are a bit skewed simply because prices came down about 10% from their peak in 2022 till about midway through 2023, or the spring, which lines up with roughly a year ago today. We saw that 10% decrease in pricing. We've obviously spent the last 12 months bringing pricing back up to where we were before that huge, or the downturn more so, if you will. And again, it was a small correction, not really a big downturn. So historically, 3% annually, that's what we're looking at. When inflation's 2%, we're beating inflation by a percentage point.
There you go.
Is there anything else we can be doing, though, becomes the question?
Oh, well, we can.
We can try and unpack that
Okay.
after traffic. The time is 12:15 on CJD 800. You're listening to Under One Roof MTL. That's LJ, that's Martin, that's Fred. I'm Robin. We did get a very interesting text that I would like to address after we check traffic.
Under One Roof MTL, hosted by Robin Flynn, featuring mortgage brokers Fred and Martin and real estate expert LJ Aguinaga. Presented by Fred and Martin Mortgages and LJ Realties.
This is your lingo lexicon on Under One Roof MTL. A deed. In Quebec real estate transactions, a deed is a legal document that serves as evidence of the transfer of property ownership from one party to another. It outlines the specific details of the transaction, including the names of the buyer and seller, the description of the property, the purchase price, and any conditions or restrictions associated with the transfer. Once signed by both parties, usually in a notary's office, the deed is registered with the appropriate government authority to officially transfer ownership. For example, let's say Sarah just purchased a condo in Griffintown. Both she and the seller will sign a deed that specifies the terms of the sale, including the purchase price, the condo unit's address, and any conditions that were previously agreed upon. After the deed is registered with the Land Registry Office, Sarah becomes the legal owner of the condo. Congratulations, Sarah. This has been your lingo lexicon on Under One Roof MTL.
I'm Robin Flynn with Fred, Martin, and LJ. This is Under One Roof MTL. We are going to dive into the federal budget. Lots of little goodies there for housing that we need to get to. Martin is like,
there's a great comment that just came in. LJ just read.
Exactly.
How many Taylor Swift fans do you think actually listen to this show? Thank
lot.
you for whoever sent that in. Because honestly, I would not wait till midnight or 2 o'clock in the morning to listen to a new Taylor Swift. I'm a classic rock guy. So if Led Zeppelin drops an album at midnight, I'll be there for Led Zeppelin. I won't be there for Taylor Swift.
You and like 4 other people. Me and the
come
billion
on.
Taylor Swift fans.
All right, Led Zeppelin has sold 300 million albums worldwide.
And Taylor Swift has the most streamed album ever on its opening day from Friday.
Here we go.
We did get an interesting text, though. We don't want to talk about Taylor Swift all the time, as much as I would love to. We did get an interesting text from somebody. We were talking about interest rates right now. And somebody said, as someone who had an 18.75% mortgage in 1981, I don't feel a lot for people who are complaining about a 6% mortgage. And we kind of all responded the same way. You know, what was your purchase price? What was the initial purchase price in relation to your income at the time? Because my parents had a single income family and bought a house for $65,000 in the late 80s. So even with that high interest rate, they were still able to afford it. Whereas people now need dual incomes to qualify for mortgages, and 6% on, you know, $600,000. That's a really big difference, right? Am I off track here?
100%. That was my first question to you, Robin. I was like, can we please find out how much they paid for this property? Because it's all nice and dandy to say we paid this interest. If you bought a $50,000 house, I'm sorry, but some people are carrying $50,000 of credit card debt at almost 30% today. That's what's hurting Canadians right now. That's where the pain is.
Are we comparing apples to oranges here?
100%.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, you gotta live in today's world. You know, what happened in the past and what will happen in the future, no one can predict.
Can you imagine 18% now with
would
the
be
cost of housing?
It would be a private loan nowadays.
Yeah, but you'd be amazed. We have conversations with people, and it's funny, they get uptight about their mortgage rates, but they don't get uptight about the credit card rates that they're paying, or their lines of credit, or so on and so forth.
Yep. It's probably because they have a direct line of communication to you, and they don't actually have that direct line of communication without sitting on hold for 2 hours when they call their credit card companies. I want to make sure we have lots of time to get into the budget, guys. So let's start. I asked each of you to choose one item. I gave you guys some homework from the budget that stood out to you.
Can we just talk about the budget? What are the 3 things that really jumped out at you?
At me?
Yeah.
Personally?
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
So you take a step back and you go, okay, what kind of budget is this? What is the Liberal government's agenda for tabling this budget. And the
Campaigning.
three things that jumped out at me.
Campaigning.
One, help the young. That's an
Yes.
easy one.
Yes.
Tax the rich
Yes.
Right.
and spend beyond our means.
Yes.
That's typical Liberal government.
Yes.
So to me, that just sounds like a platform getting ready for an election.
Yes. Well, it's a minority government, so they're always getting ready for an election.
But they've got the support of the NDP, so Singh's not going to pull the trigger.
No.
So they're going to ride this out until the
Because
fall
there's
of
a nice
2025.
dental care plan that
Well, this
they
is-
rolled out.
I think actually the person who's holding most power right now is Singh.
Jagmeet Singh.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because he's getting what he wants for the NDP.
Yeah, well, that's a good position to be in. Okay, let's go into each of the items from the budget specifically that stood out to you. Let's start with eeny, meeny, miny, mo, LJ. Why don't you take it off?
Okay, so let's unpack the fact that the home buyers plan, you can now take out up to $60,000. Now, this figure had been $35,000. We bumped it up to $60,000, which is huge. That honestly, when you look at it from the surface level, that sounds outstanding. If you're a couple and both of you happen to have $60,000, you can now take $120,000 out of your RRSPs to purchase your first home. That sounds wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
But as I mentioned a second ago, how many people, especially first-time buyers, have over $60,000 saved in their RSPs before they purchase their first property?
Nobody.
Probably zero.
And we talk to clients all week long, and we say, "Are you a first-time home buyer?" And they go, "Yeah." And I go, "Oh, you can use up to $35,000, and it's going to be increased to $60,000 of your RRSPs for your down payment." I don't have any RRSPs.
Or they have $5,000-$10,000 of RSPs.
Yeah, but it's peanuts.
You know?
Yeah.
And so bringing it up to 60, who really has $60,000 in
Is
RRSPs?
that going to
The
really
1%.
help first-time home buyers?
It's
Not people who need help making a down payment.
Ex- Exactly.
Yeah, graduate university making $75,000+ a year. That by the time they're buying the property, they may have waited 10 years because they wanted to live right next to their office because they're working a ton of hours, whatever it might be. And yeah, they might have the contribution on this, but these aren't realistically the people who needed this shift. So to me, again, campaigning. That's what this change was. They also added a 5-year grace period, which thanks for giving me an extra 5 years to pay back the money that I borrowed for myself already.
It's
but
another mortgage. You got 20 years to pay back your
But that's
RRSPs
just it.
at the same time as you're paying back your mortgage.
You're mortgaging your retirement.
100%.
Yeah.
Yikes.
So that's,
If you use 60,000, if you use 20, 30,000, okay, you could pay it back.
It just sounds good, right? But in reality, who can actually leverage that position?
I would love to know the actual data, like how many people does this help annually? Like, give me a number. Is it 10, 100, 1,000, 20,000? Like, I would love to know how many people can actually take advantage of this.
a lot less than you would think, or it's simply going to trickle down, which wasn't their intention, but it'll be families contributing to their young ones' RRSPs, essentially giving donations and gifts to bump them up, to give them access to these funds using another tax vehicle, essentially.
So not the people that they claim to be wanting to help right now. Okay, Fred, what did you want to talk about from the budget? What stood out to you?
What I decided to talk to you guys about is the amortization period from 25 years to 30 years for first-time home buyer purchasing a new build property with a down payment less than 20%. Like, this is an insured mortgage. Back in the days, we were allowed to go up to 25 years amortization. But now we're allowed to go up to 30 years amortization, but strictly on new build property. It is, for me, definitely a step in the right direction by extending that amortization period. And it will potentially help first-time home buyers to qualify or to get a lower monthly payment.
But why only new builds? What difference does it make?
Well, you need to ask Madame Freeland why she
So-
decided to...
My guess would be because they want to encourage builders. It's like, hey, look what we're doing for you builders. We're giving this option for first-time buyers where they can buy and they can amortize over 30 years. It should make it more affordable for them. Look at everything I'm doing, because our ultimate issue here is supply, right? Like we speak about it every week. Supply is the problem that we're having, and we're covering it up with interest rates and everything else.
Yeah, but the supply's not there yet.
Yeah, so we're introducing
So
more
we're-
buyers with low supply.
Like you should
It's like
help.
We're not any further away.
Yeah, the supply will come in 3-4 years, I guess.
But I think that's what we're kind of underlining of this budget. It's all smoke and mirrors.
I have a question though. So
Ooh.
I like when we can work in the term smoke and mirrors into the show. I have a question though, and this could be because I saw it on TikTok, so it may not be accurate. But somebody was talking on TikTok about how part of the reason that there's not the supply that we need is because there are property owners who are opting not to rent out their spaces so they can claim the losses on their taxes, that there are empty rental units that they'd rather not charge a lower rent on. They'd rather leave it empty and claim it as a loss. Is that something that's
Well,
actually
so-
happening?
Okay.
It could happen, but it's so rare.
Oh, yeah?
Like,
Okay.
That's going to be minute. And again, if somebody's doing this systematically, the government's coming after them.
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
if you're trying to evade taxes effectively by using it, you cannot bring it down into negative. You can't use it as losses unless you have gains on somewhere else to try and offset. But again, that's not the real issue here. As far
Okay.
as I'm concerned, that's one person's kind of
Yeah.
perspective on this. Now, the one thing I will say about the 30-year amortization, I think in Montreal, we're almost a bit sheltered from it in the sense that there's not that many new development projects on island for sure. Off island, yes, as you go 20, 30 minutes away in areas that are developing. So we're not as close to it. Maybe in provinces like Alberta, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, there are more new developments closer to the city where this might have more impact, and maybe we're just not taking enough of a broad angle view here. But in Montreal, it definitely doesn't do much for anybody.
No,
Wait,
but,
but-
LJ, if you really want to help first-time home buyers, that should be on any kind of property, the 30 years amortization.
Because between segments, we were talking about when you buy a new build, you're paying GST, PSD on it. So you're paying a premium of 13.5% on the purchase of a new buy. So you're not any further ahead. These are all smoke and mirror offers to position the Liberal government for the next election.
And that's going to take place, the 30 years, on August 1st, so I'm not mistaken.
It's not all June 25th. It's not all coming in at one time.
I think it's...
Why would they make it super clear and easy to understand? What roll out crazy dates so nobody knows what's happening and when it's happening?
You mean the way that when they rolled it out, they didn't mention that it was kind of 250 annual, which we'll get to in a second, probably in the next segment. But that, oh no, this is annual. It's not just one time or over.
But there's a great expression. If you can't convince them, confuse them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We still have to get to the topic that has been igniting X. Everybody's freaking out about the capital gains on secondary properties. We're going to talk about that after news. You are listening to Under One Roof MTL on CJD 800.
Under One Roof MTL, hosted by Robin Flynn, featuring mortgage brokers Fred and Martin and real estate expert LJ Aguinaga. Presented by Fred and Martin Mortgages and LJ Realties. This is the Mortgage Minute.
What is a purchase with renovations mortgage? This is your Mortgage Minute. A purchase with renovations mortgage provides a unique financing option for home buyers interested in purchasing a property that requires immediate renovations. This type of mortgage consolidates the costs of both the property purchase and the subsequent renovations into one manageable mortgage. When using this mortgage, the lender typically disperses funds in two segments. Initially, the funds that cover the purchase of the home, and subsequently, the renovation funds are released in stages as specific milestones in the renovation process are reached. This approach offers a significant advantage as it allows buyers to finance their home improvements directly through their mortgage at potential lower interest rates compared to personal loans or credit cards. To qualify, buyers must provide detailed renovation plans and quotes up front. Additionally, the renovations need to be completed within a fixed period defined by the lender, ensuring that the projects are executed promptly.
This is Under One Roof MTL on CJD 800. I'm Robin Flynn with LJ Aguinaga of LJ Realties, Fred Pichette and Martin Spalding from Fred and Martin Mortgages. We teed it up before we took a break for news, guys. We need to talk about this capital gains increase in the federal budget. Everybody's been freaking out about it online. There's a lot of confusion. People don't actually seem to understand what the original rules were and what the changes are. So why don't we explain it first, and then maybe everybody can weigh in.
Okay, so what I'll try to do is I'll try to walk you through on how it applies to the world of mortgages and real estate. So changes to capital gains applies to individuals, applies to gains over $250,000 for individuals. So the new rate rises from 50% to 66.7% for dispositions on or after June 25th, 2024. So let's say you have a secondary property. Now, how many people have secondary properties in Canada? They evaluated at 4.4 million Canadians. So there's a good cash grab for the Liberal government here. So if we put it into numbers, let's say you've got a vacation home and you originally purchased it for $200,000. You then sell it for $500,000. So basically, you have made a sale of $300,000. So the profit has been $300,000. So the way it works is that there's an exception at $250,000. So the first up to from 0 to $250,000, you're paying 50% in capital gains. So which is $125,000, right? And on the second portion, above $250,000, so that $50,000, you're now paying 66.7% on it.
Can I
So if
clarify there for a second?
Sure.
Because we have to note that the amount that he's mentioning here is that's the taxable income. You're not actually paying that in taxes. But that portion of the gain, so the 50% at $250, is going to be added to your income on the year so that you actually pay taxes on that amount.
At your marginal tax rate.
At your marginal tax rate, exactly. So the effective tax rate is not 50 or 66, but that is the amount that you will be taxed on. It's taxable, just to make sure we're clear, because I've had a couple back and forth with a few clients who were confused specifically because of that before we go further.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to use very simple numbers. So 50% and 66.7%. So if we go back to the taxable amount of $250,000, so it's $250,000 times 50%, $125,000. So then on the second portion, or the portion between $250 and $300, which is $50,000, it's $50,000 times 66.7%, which is $33,350. So in reality, what you used to pay 50% of, which would have been $150,000 total, you're now paying $158,350. So
paying taxes on
on
the capital gains on the
Exactly.
sale of your property. So if you
So
bought it for
It's
$200,
a taxable amount.
Yes.
Yeah,
You're
so
not
it's-
paying
that's it.
$158,000.
'Cause
That's
you're-
the part where people are getting confused.
well, that's
that's-
just it.
And that's exactly why. Because when you compare, there's like, okay, $8,000, but $8,000 more taxable. Realistically, you're paying $4,000 more in taxes.
Yeah.
That's
But,
what we're
but
looking
guys,
at.
what I'm scared about that new announcement is what's next? Are
Principal
they going to
residence.
start? Yeah.
Principal residence. That's what's
Your-
next.
Yeah, your primary residence will be taxes, I guess.
Well, because also the way
I
they
hope not,
position-
because
But the way they position this is that we're going to tax the wealthy. So it's assumed because you've got a second property that you're wealthy. But we had a phone call this week from a woman who is divorced, single breadwinner, raising 2 kids, and she decided to buy an investment property for her retirement. This is not the wealthy. This woman was paying her regular mortgage on her principal residence, bought a secondary residence, and did I say this woman?
Oh, no. I was just saying, in my mind, someone who can afford a second property, I would consider them wealthy.
well,
Oh, it's all relative because
Right?
she took care of all managing the residence in her property. She took care of all the repairs. She paid for the mortgage, and now she was hoping that one day she would sell this thing and she would garner the maximum in capital gains that she could for her retirement. So this is not only addressing the wealthy. This could be addressing people who are just trying to make an investment to set themselves up for a more prosperous retirement.
And
Even
don't-
one step further, sorry, is if somebody chose to rent, because you know what, I'm happy where I'm living, I'm conservative, I have a $1,300 a month rental and I can live here comfortably, but I want to get into the market and they buy a duplex or something and they invest that for their long-term retirement. It wasn't their principal residence, therefore they don't have the exemption. That person just owns one property technically, but they're still being affected by all this.
Yeah.
yeah, and that person just need to qualify. If she has a good income, that doesn't mean that she's very wealthy financially, but she could potentially qualify for that second property.
It's because what happens is that you read the headlines and you don't dig down into what's really going on. And, and again, I'm repeating myself, but it's, let's help the young to get into their first properties. Let's tax the rich and let's spend more money than we can afford. And that's typical liberal election rhetoric.
It's worth pointing out, though, not everybody who sells a secondary property is going to be making in excess of $250,000 in capital gains. The article that I read said that this will actually, even though there's 4 million people who have secondary properties, only 0.13% of Canadians will be impacted by this
Yeah,
increase.
the exception is still 250,000. So
Yes.
Does that
So-
take into account all the trusts and corporations that own property that would be selling, or did we just completely forget about those in that stat?
Well, for sure it's included.
Included?
I would assume so.
But Canadian, would you consider Canadian affected if a corporation's paying taxes? Is that a Canadian affected by it? I have a feeling they completely separated that from the
Yeah,
math
I think so
equation.
too. Yeah.
And therefore, I mean, anybody who owns a holding company, anybody who has a family trust. Now, again, we can argue that these are wealthier people, but I know a lot of people who have a holding company as of their first property simply because they came from the U.S. and liability on things in the U.S. is so stringent that I said, no. I want to separate myself from property, especially with our ice and snow. Somebody trips and falls. I don't want to be responsible. So they might only have one property. They put it through a holding company strictly because of the liability fear, if you will, which isn't necessarily the most realistic thing here, but nevertheless, that was the mindset on it. And now they have zero exemption because the 250 shelter does not exist for corporations or trusts. And that is what's coming into play here as well.
Yeah, but the taxation level is less on a holding company.
Interesting. Somebody texted in. Carlos says, Robin, you're wrong. I love that. Some people will buy RRSP, others buy property. That's from Carlos in a Hunsick.
But a good strategy is actually to invest into your RRSPs to use that money to buy a property.
Somebody else just actually texted in, do the capital gains rules apply to stocks as well? Yes.
Absolutely.
All capital gains
Absolutely.
are being taxed like this, whether it's Bitcoin, stocks, doesn't even matter, houses, everything's included.
Makes a lot of sense. You're listening to Under One Roof MTL on CJD 800. Do we still have some capital gains stuff we need to tackle? Are we going to carry this over some more?
I mean, my last tidbit on that is obviously if you don't have to sell, you don't have to worry about the capital gains, right? So if you are thinking about holding for the long term, let's sit tight. Now, again, Fred mentioned we don't know what else is going to happen. Are they going to increase it back up to 75 like it was in the year 2000 for a little bit? Could be.
Well, you're also assuming maybe the Liberal government gets reelected. And if you're looking at the polls, looks like the Conservatives are probably leading right now if there was an election today.
Is it going to be a vote for or will it be a vote against?
Yeah.
I don't think Pierre Poilievre cares as long as he's
As
the
long
one
as he
that
gets
wins.
into power, exactly. So.
Under One Roof MTL, hosted by Robin Flynn, featuring mortgage brokers Fred and Martin and real estate expert LJ Aguinaga. Presented by Fred and Martin Mortgages and LJ Realties.
This is Under One Roof MTL. We are with you until 1 p.m. Keep those texts coming, guys, whether you agree, disagree, or you have questions. 514-800. We love to hear from you. Before we announce our cookie winner for the week, we need to head over to LJ Aguinaga from LJ Realties to chat about our property of the week.
I have another architectural beauty this week. This time it's designed by Pelletier de Fontenay. Step into luxury with this stunning urban oasis. Enjoy an open concept living area flooded with natural light from floor to ceiling windows and skylights, complemented by heated floors throughout. On the main level, the spacious retreat boasts 2 closed bedrooms, a stylish bathroom with double sinks, and a convenient laundry room. Entertain in style in the large kitchen with quartz countertops, separate dining room and living room featuring built-in bookshelves. Upstairs, find your sanctuary in the primary bedroom with ensuite bathroom, while the family room opens to a private patio with breathtaking city views. The condo is complete with a private storage and a parking spot. This is urban living at its finest. The property is offered at $1.45 million. Stop by our open house today from 2 to 4 p.m. And as always, my favorite restaurant in the area is Montreal Plaza, only 2 minutes away. Check them out for a very fun dining experience.
Montreal Plaza. What do they serve there? I've heard that.
Everything.
Everything?
It's
I've never been.
all sorts
Is it like an endless menu? You can go in there?
No, not endless menu. Very much, it's higher end dining, but like you're going to get little dinosaurs on your plate.
Oh, that's very cool.
And LG, what's the address of this property?
6055 Chateaubriand
Where is that?
6055.
in La Petite Patrie.
Oh, I'm ready to make an offer. Just have to have a description now.
Let's do it.
That's it. Cash. Cash
Oh,
offer.
cash.
Cash offer.
LJRealties.com. Check it out.
Okay.
Very, very cool. Okay, trivia question of the week, which is brought to you by Felix and Norton Cookies. Visit their store at the Blue Haven Shopping Center in DDO. Our question this week, when was the last time that Montreal hosted the Summer Olympics? Tim in Chateauguay, and you guys can look at the screen. He was the first person to text in. I didn't pick him.
Chateauguay
I didn't
again.
pick him because he's from
Chateauguay
Chateauguay. He was the first person to correctly text in 1976. So congratulations, Tim. Check your texts so that we can get those cookies over to you.
You know, Robin, if I had asked that trivia question, I would have said, when was the last time Montreal hosted the 76 Olympics?
And this is why I write the trivia questions.
Exactly. Thank God.
Week. Okay. final thoughts on the budget. We kind of each touched on one aspect. Was there anything else that we need to discuss that was in the budget that's going to impact homeowners?
Well, it's funny because I was invited on Monday to the Elias Macca show.
Yes.
Just to talk about mortgage rates. Are they going to come back down? And as a final question, he goes, what are your expectations for the budget? And I said, I hope we live within our means. And I hope there are some significant efforts to increase the inventory of housing availability throughout Canada. So my last 3 words with Elias was build, build, build.
I like that. If you build it, they will come, right?
Well, they've already
Field of
come. That's the
dreams.
problem.
Yeah,
They
they're
did
already
already
here.
Yeah, but they've already come.
They're here.
They're here.
Whatever. We've talked about this off air, guys. Remember after World War II, they built tons of really tiny,
I talked
cheap
about
houses?
the strawberry box houses because
Yeah,
they
the,
look like strawberry boxes.
War era houses. They still have them in like Lachine.
And we just did a mortgage for someone who's purchasing one.
Yes.
And their mother is actually living in a strawberry box house.
Wow.
And she absolutely adores it. Because they're not squeezed together. There's actually land around them.
Mm-hmm.
And they were well built. And they were built very efficiently, very quickly. And that's the type of thing that we need to see from the governments.
What's the difference, though? Why can't we build houses like that as quick as we did? Is it there's too much just like red tape, too many inspectors?
There are too many agendas.
Okay. Like there's no benefit in building them?
No.
But
But
there are too many agendas.
I'd say building permits, supervision, costs.
Red tape, bureaucracy.
Yeah, it like we purchased a lot November 2020, and we got our permit to build about a month ago.
Wow.
That
So-
thing isn't built yet?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, that's not exactly inspiring confidence in our
So-
ability to build.
I hate to say this, but during COVID, the Chinese built a hospital in 10 days.
Yes, they did.
There you go.
And I was getting my COVID tests at a tent in a hospital parking lot.
Or an old gas station.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I was in a conference this week, and Canada ranked, I think, second worst to get a permit from cities or from.
Really?
Yeah,
Interesting.
It was
That's
terrible.
one thing Polyev is talking about,
Yeah.
making it easier to get these permits for building to pass through because of all the red tape we have to deal with right
We
now.
just got to get on with it.
Do you guys pay attention to those happiness index reports that come
Yeah,
out?
yeah.
So I saw one, I don't think it was the official happiness index, but I did see one about like life satisfaction, and it was Gen Z, so that's the generation after millennials. These guys are in their 20s right now. They ranked 58th in the world for overall life satisfaction, Canadian Gen Zers. And people were trying to dissect why that is, and one of them was that homeownership just feels out of reach for a lot of young people. So what would your advice be to people who are, maybe just finishing college, getting ready to graduate? Do you have advice for them on how they can set themselves up for success?
Stay with your parent a little longer and save the down payment. That will be my first advice.
Yeah, stay with your parents. That's the hard part when you're 19.
Sadly.
And you want to move out and you want that independence. Yeah, I remember when I was 19 still living at home, my mom tried to ground me once. And I was like, Mom, I'm 19. I'm not grounded.
Well, actually, we did a file last summer where a guy was living at home and he was acting like he already had a mortgage. And for 5 years, he was paying the same amount, municipal and school taxes included, that a mortgage for a $300,000 or $400,000 house would cost him. So over those 5 years, he created the down payment that he needed by putting the money aside, but he also got accustomed to those costs associated to owning their own property. And so when he transitioned from his parents' house to the house that he ultimately bought, it wasn't shocking for him. He was already ready for it because he had created the habit already by living at his parents' house, by putting money, the same amount that he had to put aside had he been paying a mortgage.
So the recommendation here is parents, let your kids live at home rent free so they can save up a down payment. Don't make them pay rent to you.
Or parents, if you're sitting on a huge nest egg, give some money to your kids so they can get going.
Makes a lot of sense. That's pretty much it for us for this week. A reminder that Under One Roof MTL can be heard live every Sunday at noon right here on CJD 800 after the trivia show. If you want to learn more about us, you can visit our website at underoneroofmtl.com. You can also reach LJ, Fred, and Martin individually. LJ, where do people go to find you?
My website, ljrealties.com. You can also feel free to find me on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, and X, formerly Twitter. My handle is LJ Aguinaga on all of those platforms. Or for more information on our listings or our real estate estate team under the handle LJ Realties. Feel free to call or text me at 514-500-4040. Looking forward to hearing from you.
Awesome. Fred Martin, where can people get in touch with you?
He just said it. FredMartin.com. FredMartin.com.
Easy to remember.
That's it.
And when you go on the website, both of your faces are there with your individual phone numbers. It's super easy to get in touch.
And you can actually book a meeting with us directly through the website.
On the website. LJ?
We actually just got a text message saying that we need to build, but homes need to be affordable. We don't need any more $600,000 condos being purchased by foreign investors or the upper class. First of all, there's a foreign buyer's ban right now in Canada for the next 3 years roughly. So that's not what's moving the needle at all right now. And 100% when we're talking about building, I think my thought process at least is always building communities of townhouses, single family homes, things of that nature that will actually
Well, we were talking about Strawberry Box houses, and that's exactly the initiative that they did after the war.
100%. We're really focusing on that type of living.
Affordable living.
New schools, parks, full everything. You know, it's not these downtown condos. 100% we understand that. That's not what's driving us right now.
Yep. Neighborhoods change over the years, right? Like I bought a house in the neighborhood that I grew up in, and when I lived there, it was a retirement community. All of the houses were elderly people. There were no kids. We were the only kids on my block. Now that I'm living there, 25 years after my parents bought that house, it's a family community. It's tons of families with young kids playing in the street, riding their bikes. Communities evolve and change over time, right?
So, you always get the best advice from the parking attendant from the building that you park in. So we have offices that we work, which is in one of those towers that have been built around the Bell Center. And the parking attendant, Stefan, keeps telling us that most of the apartments in those towers are investment properties and are sitting empty.
That's a bummer.
Yeah.
I don't like hearing that.
So I completely agree with the listener. We're talking about affordable housing in communities that people can afford and they can raise their families in.
That's exactly what we need more of. If you missed anything, you can listen to the show in its entirety on the iHeartRadio app, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. For LJ, Fred, and Martin, I'm Robin. This has been Under One Roof MTL.
Under One Roof MTL, hosted by Robin Flynn, featuring mortgage brokers Fred and Martin and real estate expert LJ Aguinaga. Presented by Fred and Martin Mortgages and LJ Realties.